Hello and welcome to another episode of Mail Unleashed, brought to you by Market Reach. That's marketreach.co.uk. And on this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Jonny Harrison. Now, Jonny is the Digital Strategy Director at the Seven Stars, the Seven Stars being a media agency, which is, I think, a media planning agency, pure and simple, isn't it?
Correct.
First of all, I think we've obviously got to ask, the Seven Stars, why is it called the Seven Stars?
The Seven Stars. So the Seven Stars is named after a pub very near to our current office in Aldwych. I guess like all good businesses, not named after seven people who joined the agency. It was named after this specific pub where the idea of a media agency was first born. Actually, even our sister agency, the Bountiful Cow, then followed suit. We're like, what should we name this agency? We called it Bountiful Cow, which was the other pub that we'd always
The other nearby pub.
Exactly.
Fantastic. And it's interesting, of course, that you appear on a programme effectively promoting the value of direct mail while being head of digital strategy. Okay, so let's hear about that wonderful contradiction.
It's always interesting. And again, I'm really pleased to be here today. I think, interestingly for me, so again, what is digital strategy for an agency, right? And I think my colleagues and friends at different agencies may have a very similar job title, but our jobs may be actually slightly different. And I think what's interesting to me is when you look at the UK ad market at the moment, around about, depending on what you read, 75% to 80% is digital in some way. And I guess what I mean by that is it's ad served in some way.
Yes.
So that could be digital audio, it might be programmatic out of home, all of those great things. And I think that's where, you're talking about kind of those small up and coming brands who are looking maybe to do their first, their first dive into marketing for the very first time. I think there's automatically a shift that happens into let's use digital channels first. Let's test a bit of paid search. Let's test some social areas where we can maybe have a little bit of spend and we can start to grow that. I think where I'm really excited is the innovation that can happen across the market. I have to know all media channels. I don't just have to be, I can't just know those digital channels. And I think there's absolutely, I think one of the areas where fundamentally digital marketing has got it wrong, certainly in the 15 years I've been in the industry, is we've never really got creative right. And that's the big challenge I think we face. I think so many of our formats, and maybe I'm talking specifically about display marketing at the moment. And I think, again, where this comes back, I guess, to mail is that opportunity for physicality is something that is absolutely important. I think, again, using the example of your I guess go-to media channels, or certainly in performance media, your Googles, Metas, social, et cetera. I think it's really easy to look past traditional media channels for their effectiveness, because maybe you can't report on them on a real-time basis. Yeah. So I think the effectiveness is a real challenge. But I would say, looking at, from my perspective, mail is really important in an omni-channel media campaign, for sure. And some of the innovation that's happening that we see in the rest of the market, retail media, AI, creative adaptation, that can be applied as much to mail as it can be applied to much of the digital ecosystem.
Of course, the more revolutionary your idea, the more it requires people to change their behaviour. And the more you need behavioural change, the more you need marketing to help people through it effectively.
Yeah.
Electric cars are an interesting example, because one of the fascinating things there is everybody gets fixated on range and charging time, which nobody talked about with petrol. Nobody talked about the range of their petrol car.
Yep.
And so media like mail, which have a proven record of actually getting, ooh, that's interesting, I never thought of it like that before, maybe I should give this a go. The whole credit card industry was built on direct mail. Yeah. Charities have been built on direct mail. There's also something interesting, which is that digital companies instinctively don't like the idea, because the natural tech mentality is to make everything digital.
Totally agree. I think there's something interesting there you touch on, especially around attention. So again, I think when I'm thinking about attention within the digital space and how that compares to mail, so 2 in 3 consumers say that mail gives them their undivided attention. Now, we will be battling across social and across video and the whole digital ecosystem for seconds of attention, right? That whole attention economy. We have fleeting moments where we're trying to get that thumb stopper creative on Meta and the likes. And it's really easy to look over traditional media channels like mail, where that attention is much, much greater and decluttered. I think the clutter is a massive issue we have in digital. How many different ads you see, just visit pretty much any news website, and you're getting tens of different banners across that site, trying to sell different products. I think mail is really interesting in that space, but I do think genuinely it's a perception issue that we're challenged with when it comes to mail versus those digital channels. I was listening to a podcast, one of the Freakonomics podcasts in the US, and they were talking about mail specifically, and a company on there called it hand-delivered communications. And I think just changing the perception and what does that really mean? And immediately to the consumer, that sounds more interesting than potentially a direct mail, like just changing it like that. That's rather wonderful. Yeah. But even for me, it's how do you digitize that?
And of course, I mean, the fact that it's old, we were talking about this, the irony of all this, of course, is that direct mail was actually the first digital medium in the way that if you worked in an advertising agency in 1986, 1988, virtually nothing you did was computerized, except the direct marketing people, i.e. the people doing direct mail, would have these enormous tapes that would arrive from some mainframe somewhere in order to process the mailing list. Because I mean, it went from literally in a period of 20 years, literally the mailing list for a large company would occupy these enormous, I mean, now you could get an entire customer database on a cheap laptop, But back then, the only people who are really engaging with the world of computing and digitization were the people doing addressable media. Everybody else was basically in the analog world, TV included, for another 10 years, another 15 years. So it's quite strange that actually we were kind of there first in a funny kind of way.
I think that's really interesting. And that, obviously, talking about addressable media, I mean, it's not too long ago, when we're talking probably post-lockdown, the real shift to, data clean technology. How do we do addressable media more effectively? How do we get hold of first-party data or zero-party data, more interestingly, so that we can take advantage of digital channels or connected TV channels and target people in a more precise way? There's pushes to try and be more precise in many different digital arenas because of cookie deprecation and everything else, and a push to be more precise within media. Well, that precision is already available to many customers within mail, but it often gets overlooked as a media channel.
You now have programmatic mail, which is effectively entirely digitally printed on demand, which is no more painful to do. But it was historically fitting. I worked in direct marketing for 15 years, and much to my depression, it had never occurred to me before, which was that someone confessed to me at a dinner that the worst nightmare of any marketing person was being given either the loyalty program or the direct marketing brief, simply because of things like the attention to detail required, and and by the way, I mean, one of the interesting things about everything from AI to automation is that problem can at least be solved to a large extent.
Absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree with all of that. But the laziness is something that's really interesting. I think one of the things that fundamentally concerns me about use of AI at the moment is how it can be used to shortcut creative. I think you don't come up with, it's the obvious example, but you don't come up with the Cadbury's Gorilla ad by following best practice. And I think if you look at the majority of display creators, or whether it be on your phone or on your laptop, or, on the way home, they all look the same.
Having said that, very occasionally, and it's rare, there's a banner that someone's put a little bit of love or ingenuity into. And by the way, the cut through it achieves just by dint of going, someone's thought about that before they wrote it.
And I do think, that's why we do see also like brilliant examples within mail, where it's slightly different, very, very different formats, all shapes and sizes, and necessarily you have to think about what you're putting on that, right? I think that is a big difference between templated display creative, even some video creative that we see, especially some stuff that's clearly AI generated. It's this will do, I think sometimes. Whereas with mail, again, you're capturing attention, at least 60, 90 seconds plus. One of the most highly attentive media channels out there. You've got to really make that count. I think because the attention can be so short, and it's a bit counterintuitive, but so short within other digital media channels, probably it's a bit more quantity rather than quality.
134 seconds on average, we've heard, is the attention span of a typical direct mail piece. There are also some very bright people who've argued that actually what we ought to do, now that the only great virtue is tangibility, is we ought to actually invest in lovely things that people want to keep, give people small things of value or utility, because we are actually sending something physical. By putting a letter in a little slot on this thing, and if it tipped over, it was over 60 grams. Very ingenious little device. Okay. Now, I'm just trying to think, that must have been introduced 13 years ago. I've still got that little thing. Okay. Now, that 13 years, durability isn't bad for a piece of marketing communication.
Yeah, I think that's massive. And I think even, one of our clients, and not males specific, but even someone like a Gusto, giving their customers something tangible like the free wooden spoon on your fifth box or whatever it might be now. That's
I got 3 of those.
Exactly that, and it is that tangibility, that physical thing. I think even come back to one of your points earlier. If direct mail wasn't around previously, and it was a brand new channel tomorrow, I think the ability to have that physical communication.
You're right.
When someone's
with that
saying,
drone analogy, people go, "This is incredible."
Yeah.
Right?
Where can I do more of this?
Where can I do more of this?
Knocking at our agency door for that. And I think that's the important part we have to reiterate. Equally, I think that's also really interesting when we think about the different kind of channel mix. The best recipes might have multiple ingredients. If you've just got a single ingredient, which might be your paid search, for example, you're probably going to have a slightly less good end product than if you're using multiple. So I really like that. Really like that as an analogy.
One of my proudest moments in terms of winning an argument was once persuading. In the end, the launch never happened, but I persuaded Google to launch a product using direct mail. Now, this seems completely absurd because they presumably have quite a lot of data, and they probably have an email address for practically everybody on the planet or some means of reaching them. And yet my argument was that in terms of making people think that something important and different was happening and that they were part of a selective group who could participate in it, mail conveyed that in a way that no real digital medium could. But two things, I think, with the digital first businesses, as you said, one of which is they disproportionately benefit from having some physical manifestation of what you are, is all the more important.
I like that idea. And even one that springs to mind, not a client of ours, but someone like Ocado, online only business, but that piece of communications, which was their purple van, seeing that on your, either go through the high street or one of your neighbours, all of a sudden, that's, okay, they deliver in my area. This is really interesting. How can I push that? And I've seen, from Market Reach, some of the communications that the likes of Waitrose have done, just delivering a van-shaped piece of mail in your letterbox, being able to see that and understand, this is telling me that Waitrose delivers in my area. I think that physicality is really interesting. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think that's really, really interesting, and something we talk to our clients about a lot, actually, effectiveness versus efficiency. I don't think any media is expensive. I don't think any media channel is expensive. It's only expensive if it doesn't drive the outcome that you're looking for. And if a media channel is more expensive but drives a better lifetime value, then surely that should be a positive thing for the business, because you're driving, more customers who are better value for you. I think we've been lost in that kind of digital reporting ecosystem where we come back to CPA because it's an easy metric, it's a short-term metric, and it can be useful in certain ways for comparison. It absolutely does not tell you the value of the customer coming through. So we are doing, like all businesses, there is a lot of work going on to measure lifetime value in a more effective way.
I got a perfect quote to illustrate that, which was perfect fun to end. I had a brilliant copywriter colleague called Alistair Graham, and he said the language of marketing is like the language of astrology. If you're talking to fellow believers, it sounds wonderful, and I think that's part of the problem. Jonny, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much indeed. That's all for this episode of Mail Unleashed, brought to you once again by the wonderful people at Market Reach. That's marketreach.co.uk. If you're keen to unleash the power of direct mail, then head over to that website, marketreach.co.uk. That's all for this time. All that remains for me to say massive thanks to Jonny at the 7 Stars, and see you next time. Thank you very much.